This morning I've been out in the Channel with our new small boats operational command. And the whole experience just reinforces how tragic, morally wrong and profoundly unfair this situation is. We've got organised criminals risking people's lives in makeshift dinghies. Gangs trying to usurp the role of government, taking it upon themselves to decide who comes to our country. Our asylum system is being overwhelmed with people travelling from safe countries, taking away our capacity to help those in the greatest need. And the British people are having to spend £6 million a day putting up illegal migrants in hotels. Now, earlier this year, I set out 5 priorities: to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce debt, cut waiting list, and stop the boats. Today, I'd like to update you on the progress that the Home Secretary and I are making. And my message is this: our plan is starting to work. Before I launched my plan in December, the number entering the UK illegally in small boats had more than quadrupled in 2 years. Now, some said this problem was insoluble, or just a fact of 21st century life. They'd lost faith in politicians to put in the hard yards to do something about it. And of course, we still have a long way to go. But in the 5 months since I launched the plan, crossings are now down 20% compared to last year. That's right, crossings are down 20%. This is the first time since this problem began that arrivals between January and May have fallen compared to the year before. And this progress is not replicated across the Channel. Illegal migrants entering the rest of Europe have risen by 30%. But we are not complacent because we know people smugglers are highly organised and will change their tactics if we let them. I will not rest until the boats are stopped. With grip and determination, the government can fix this, and we are using every tool at our disposal. First, I promise to work closely with our international partners, because this is a global phenomenon. There are 100 million people displaced around the world, and European countries alone saw almost a million asylum applications last year. And this international approach is delivering. Our partnership with France stopped around 33,000 crossings last year, 40% more than the year before. I've put cooperation on tackling illegal migration on the agenda of every international summit I've been to, from the G7 and the Council of Europe to last week's European Political Community Summit in Moldova. Last week, we agreed a new action plan with Bulgaria. We began discussions on joint working with the European Border Agency Frontex. And in December, I reached a deal with Albania. Because last year, nearly a third of all those arriving in small boats were from that safe European country. That's delivering too. We've now returned 1,800 to Albania in just 6 months. We've gone from accepting around 1 in 5 Albanian asylum cases to now just 1 in 50, in line with our European partners. And what is the result of all of this? Well, so far this year, the number of Albanian small boat arrivals has fallen by almost 90%. This is proof that our deterrence strategy can work. When people know that if they come here illegally, they won't get to stay, they stop coming. Now, second, I promise to improve enforcement. So we've doubled the funding given to the National Crime Agency for tackling organised immigration crime, and arrests here of illegal workers have more than doubled. Third, I promise to stop people spuriously using modern slavery claims to frustrate their removal. And since we started asking for basic evidence to back up modern slavery claims, the refusal rate has tripled. Fourth, I promise to clear through the backlog of people waiting for initial decision. Numbers published today show that the initial decision legacy backlog is down by over 17,000. And we're on track to clear it entirely by the end of the year. Fifth, I promised we would get illegal migrants out of hotels and into alternative sites, including military facilities. Today, I can confirm new large sites will open at Wethersfield and Scampton, with hundreds moving in over the summer and nearly 3,000 by the autumn. And while we're bringing those sites online, we're also making more efficient use of hotels by asking people to share rooms where it's appropriate to do so. We found an additional 11,500 places, which will save taxpayers an extra £250 million a year. And I say to those migrants who are objecting, this is more than fair. If you're coming here illegally, claiming sanctuary from death, torture, or persecution, then you should be willing to share a taxpayer-funded hotel room in central London. To reduce pressures on local communities, we'll also house people on ships. The first will arrive in Portland in the next fortnight, and we've secured another 2 today that will accommodate another 1,000. Finally, I promised not just to reform our asylum system, but to reform our laws. So we've introduced unprecedented legislation to make clear that if you come here illegally, you will be detained and removed in weeks, either to your own country or to a safe third country like Rwanda. Our Stop the Boats bill passed the House of Commons in weeks, despite the Labour Party voting against it at every turn. And we're preparing now so that once any legal challenges are complete, we will be able to put this bill into practice. I'm ensuring we have more detention capacity to hold those who arrive illegally, enough court capacity to process their cases, and the planes to remove them to Rwanda. I know these are tough measures, and I make no apology for that. We cannot allow our generosity of spirit to be used as a weapon against us or against those who are being pushed to risk their lives in the Channel by criminal gangs. Our approach is working. For the first time, crossings are down by 20%. But we are not complacent. This won't be solved overnight, and people will continue to come this summer, which is why it is so important that we change the law. My policy is very simple. It is this country and your government who should decide who comes here, and not criminal gangs. I will do what is necessary to achieve it. I said I would stop the boats, and I meant it. Thank you. If we take some questions from the media next, and could I start, please, with the BBC?
Thank you, Prime Minister. Chris Mason, BBC News. You're continuing to promise to stop the boats. There it is on the lectern in front of you, and yet there has been around 7,500 migrants who've crossed on small boats so far this year, with the summer months ahead. Is it credible to promise to stop them? Literally no more boats?
So thank you, Chris. I think the most important people to take away from today is that our plan is working. Now, I've always said this isn't an easy problem to fix. We won't fix it overnight, and there's no one simple solution to it. But we're doing a range of things, and that's the plan I announced 5 months ago. But the message from today is that plan is working. Why do I have confidence in that? It's because for the first time since the small boats phenomenon arose a few years ago, for the first time, numbers are down. So this year, January to May, the numbers crossing are down by 20%, down by a fifth. Right, we haven't seen that before, and it is specific to the UK, because if you look at what's happening in Europe, the numbers so far this year are up almost a third. So I think that, to me, shows that the plan we put in place is working. Now, of course, there's work to do. As I said, people will still come here in the summer. The gangs will keep trying other routes. But the measures that we are putting in place are starting to work, and I think you can see that most concretely when it comes to the Albanian situation, where the number of crossings from Albania, of illegal migrants from Albania, is down by 90%. So I have confidence that the plan is working. We're obviously not there yet. There's lots of work to do, but I'm here to give people an update on this very important priority. And I think the message from today is have confidence, because the plan is working, numbers are down for the first ever time, and there's lots more that we're doing. Perfect. Next, if we could go to Channel 5.
Thanks, Prime Minister. Andy Bell, 5 News. do you actually have any evidence that it is your policies of deterrence that are leading to this drop and not something like bad weather, for instance, that there's been actually reducing number of people crossing?
Well, thanks, Andy. I think look, there are two things I'd point to. One is the fact that crossings elsewhere in Europe are up by almost a third over a similar time period, and yet crossings into the UK are down by a fifth. I think that should tell us something, that something is going on here, and that's the result, I think, of the actions that we've put in place, and there's a range of different actions that we've put in place that are contributing to that. And I think the best example, as I was saying to Chris earlier, is when you look at the number of illegal migrants coming from Albania. Now, I think people will remember when we last spoke about this, I said to everyone, Albania accounted for around a third of all small boat arrivals last year, a third. And Albania is, of course, a safe European country. So we put in place a range of changes, a new deal with Albania that we negotiated, and I pay tribute to Robert Jenrick, the Immigration Minister, the Home Secretary, for all their work on this Albanian situation. A new deal with Albania that allows us to return people, a change in how we process Albanian claims, and you can see the proof is in the numbers. So since we put those changes in place, the rejection or the acceptance rate for Albanian asylum claims is now gone all the way down to around 2%, bringing us in line with our European competitors, our European neighbours. That wasn't the case before we made all these changes. We were accepting far more claims from Albania, which was not right. So we've made that change, and you can see that. We have a new deal with Albania, and now we've returned, as I said, 1,800 people to Albania since we signed the deal, and the number of Albanian crossings this year is down by 90%. Right? So I think that should give people confidence that when you do put a system in place that demonstrates to those who are interested in thinking about coming here that they won't get to stay, that they will be returned, either back to where they came from in the case of Albania or an alternative like Rwanda, that you see the numbers come down. I think that's proof that the deterrence effect can work. Now, we've seen that with Albania. That's why it's important that we get the Rwanda policy up and running so that we can demonstrate that deterrence effect to a much broader range of people as well. But I think, look, as I said, I feel confident that the range of things we're doing is making a difference. The plan is starting to work, and people feel confident that we can get the job done. Next, can I turn to the Daily Mail?
Hi, Ryan from the Daily Mail. Ryan from the Daily Mail. The two new barges, where are they going to be, please?
So on barges, we will wait to announce where they're going to be. What I would say is it's really important to me that we reduce the number of people in hotels. I think local communities up and down the country are seeing the pressure that it's causing on their areas, and there's obviously the expense. As I said, £6 million a day is being spent on housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That's not right. It's not fair. We need to bring the numbers down. We're doing that in a range of ways. Large sites, military sites, which we've announced today. Also, the policy to have asylum seekers share rooms to increase capacity and save the taxpayer money, which I think is entirely reasonable and fair, but also vessels and barges.
Well, how much notice will people be given? When in communities, say Portland, for example, there's been quite a lot of concern about Biggie Stop Home turning up there. Will people in communities be given enough notice so that they can be prepared for perhaps what is coming?
Yeah, so thank you, Brian. Yeah, so we do extensive engagement with local communities in advance of other large sites or barges. Of course, we should do that. That's the right thing to do. That's what we do. There are multi-agency forums that are established at a local level to bring together all the local stakeholders. Where appropriate, there's 24/7 police and security protection, and of course, local areas get funding to make sure that they have the resources and support they need to provide any services that are required. So that's the work that goes on. But what I am pleased is that we have now not just one barge arriving in a fortnight in Portland, but we've secured 2 further boats today, and then we will work through the detail and implementation of those. But I think all of that, again, just demonstrates a government putting in the hard yards, doing things that people said, quite frankly, were not possible. They said this wouldn't be workable, it wasn't possible. We have persevered. put the elbow grease in, and now we have one coming, 2 more on their way. That will hopefully over time mean thousands of extra spaces, which will relieve pressure on local communities because people would like their hotels to be returned to their normal use. This is a way to do it, and we're making good progress on that. Next, can I turn to the Sun?
From the Sun, you say that your plan's working, but you won't say that you'll stop the boats by Christmas. What number does success look like to you? And secondly, it's also been reported you will raise Ben Wallace's candidacy for NATO General Secretary with Joe Biden this week. Is it time for a Brit to lead NATO?
So, Natasha, on numbers, I'll let other people will judge how well we're doing. And the purpose of today's update is to give people a sense of progress. And I believe there's reasons to be confident that our plan is working. We've been through the numbers. But it's not just the number of people coming that is coming down. We're making progress on hotels. We're making progress on getting the backlog down. We're also making progress on enforcement. What you've seen is the number of illegal working raids has gone up by 50%. That was one of the things that I talked about. We've also doubled the number of arrests from our activity tackling illegal working. And again, that's all part of a plan. It all creates a deterrence effect that people should not try and come here illegally. So we've made progress there as well. So across all the aspects of the 10 points that I spoke about when I launched the plan at the end of last year, I think people can see that we're making progress on all of them, but crucially the numbers are down, and there's yet lots more to come. And then people ultimately can make a judge of whether we're doing a good enough job or not. I believe we've made more progress on this issue than anyone's made in a very long time, because it's the first time the numbers have come down. And then look, on NATO, I think look, Ben does a fantastic job. He's a great defence secretary. This is a conversation that is happening amongst leaders around the world more generally, and I'm sure it will continue to happen. I would say Ben is widely respected amongst his colleagues around the world, particularly for the role he's played in Ukraine and supporting Ukraine. And Britain has always been a leading contributor to NATO. We're one of the handful of countries that always met our obligation to spend 2% of our GDP on defence. Currently, we're spending even more than that. And we've been a leader in NATO operations. We're one of the only countries that participates in every single NATO operation. We are widely perceived as a thought leader in NATO. And I think if you ask the NATO Secretary General, he would agree with everything I've just said. And we will always continue to be a strong contributor and participant in NATO. Next, again, I know we're kind of conscious of time as well. Can I turn to Kent Online?
Yes, the illegal migration bill is going through the Lords today. Are you worried that that might stall things, because the Lords have had opposition towards anti-illegal immigrant policy in the past?
Thanks, Sam. So look, it's really important for me to see this new law on the statute books. It's one of my 5 priorities. I believe it's the country's priority as well to see the boats stopped. And this new law is an important part of how we will do that. Why? Because this law makes it unequivocally clear that if you come to our country illegally, you will not be able to stay. Instead, you will be swiftly detained and then sent back either to your own country if it's safe to do so, or to Rwanda or another third country alternative. That's the process that this bill puts in place, and it means that people will be processed in a matter of days and weeks, not months and years. And if we can get that working, the deterrent effect, I think, will be very powerful. That's why the bill is so important. I'm pleased to say it was passed in the House of Commons in a matter of weeks. With strong support, although the Labour Party did oppose it at each and every turn. But it is important to me that this bill does get put on the statute books, because it's an important part of how we will stop the boats. But I'd also say that I'm already doing the work now to make sure that when the bill does come into law and manages any legal challenges that we may have to deal with, that we are ready to implement it. So I'm already doing meetings almost twice a week with all the relevant cabinet secretaries to make sure that all the building blocks and elements of operationalising the bill will be put in place in advance. So that's making sure we have enough detention capacity to detain people. It's making sure that we have enough judicial capacity to hear people's cases and claims in a matter of days and weeks. And it's making sure that we have all the logistics in place to actually remove people to Rwanda. All of that is hard work, and we're at it now, as I said, twice a week, making sure that we've got everything ready so that when the bill comes into law and is ready to be used, that we are absolutely ready to use it as soon as possible. And then if we've got time maybe for a couple more. Perfect. Right. Can I go to ITV Meridian? We've got local ITV.
Thank you, Prime Minister. It's Abby Bracken from ITV Meridian. There have been very few, almost all small boat crossings that have arrived in the UK arrive here in Kent, and that's putting huge pressure on public services. Can I ask what you're doing to address that? And can I also say it's been exceptionally windy in the Channel for several days now, meaning there have been hardly any small boat crossings. Is that why you've chosen to come here today?
So, Abby, thanks. On, first of all, I'll just pay tribute to Natalie, who's here as a local MP, and Natalie spends an enormous amount of time when she's in Westminster talking to me and other ministers to make sure that Dover and Kent more generally is getting the support and engagement that it needs to deal with the challenges that small boat phenomenon causes. Because of Natalie's campaigning, we've invested quite a lot. I think the first Levelling Up Fund, Kent received almost £40 million for infrastructure improvements to make sure that migration processing was much easier, as well as working very closely with council and other authorities here to deal with everything. And more generally, just investing in the local community, whether it's through our High Street funds, our towns funding, our Levelling Up funding. I think Kent and the local communities here are seeing that investment go into their local areas as well, distinct from the specific resources that we're putting in place to deal with this. I think the best way to relieve that pressure is to stop people from coming in the first place, right? So rather than treating the symptoms, actually treat the cause. That's why the bill is so important. It's why we need to pass new laws, have international agreements, get the backlog down. If we do all of those things, we can move to a system which means people won't be able to stay if they come here illegally into this part of the country or anywhere else. I think we will see people stop coming, right? And that's the best way to relieve the pressure on the community here. And I want them to be reassured that it is one of my 5 priorities, as they can see. It's very important to me. And the message to take away from today is the plan is working. So for the first time since this small boat phenomenon came upon us, the numbers are down by almost a fifth this year. And I think, as we've gone through all the reasons why, I think that is a sign of encouragement. But we are not complacent. Of course, the summer is coming. Of course, gangs will keep trying different routes and different methodologies. We need to be alert to that. It's why we need to pass the law. It's so important that the law passes, because that will really help us resolve this problem. And in terms of the timing of my visit, there's many things I can control. The weather is not one of them. So I wish it was so. Right. But actually, I think there's at least the second, if not third time I've been here. It's actually very good to see the team here locally who are doing such incredible work. Firstly, to say thank you to them, because as I said, the progress we've made since we put the plan in place is marked, and they deserve enormous credit for it. But the second thing is, as I said at the opening of my remarks, when you talk to the teams here who are the ones who are out on the front line picking migrants up, I think it really brings home how awful and tragic this situation is. Right? You talk to them and they will talk to you. Just the other week, picking up toddlers who were suffering from hypothermia in a makeshift dinghy that was not remotely seaworthy. Right? I mean, some of us were out on the boat earlier before, trying our hardest not to get ill, to deal with the weather. If you're in a makeshift dinghy, which is not seaworthy, where it is freezing, in conditions that are far worse than today, and children are being exposed to that, I'm sorry, but that is completely and utterly wrong. And when you talk to the team here, are the ones who have to deal with that on a daily basis and rescue those people, they would tell you that it's wrong. And that's why the moral thing to do, the compassionate thing to do, is to stop these criminal gangs from being able to exploit people like that and put them on these rafts and send them across the channel. It is wrong, and that's why it's right that we're doing everything we can to stop it. I think absolute last one. Have we got the Times?
It's Matt Dathan from the Times. You spent £500 million to the French in March, I think it was. Are you satisfied the French are doing enough to stop the boats? What is their interception rate, and what interception rate would be value for money for the British taxpayer? And secondly, just you were talking about how tragic it was seeing children cross in those conditions. You're planning to detain children indefinitely. Are you going to put a time limit on that when the bill comes to the Lords or the Commons later this summer?
So thanks, Matt. On detention, the reason that's in place is because we don't want to create an incentive for people to put children on these boats. Right, so if you exempted children from the policy, then you'd give every incentive for people to bring children along with them, and you put more children at risk, actually. So I don't think that's the right thing to do, and that's why they are included. Now, obviously, there are appropriate facilities for families. They're not separated. They're kept together, and we need to make sure that that's done properly and fairly, as it always has been and will continue to be so. But I think it would be a mistake to exclude children, because, as I said, it would just create an incentive for people to put more children on the boats, and that would be awful. Now, with regard to the French deal, yes, I think the French deal is already showing progress. Last year we stopped around 33, or the French stopped around 33,000 people from crossing. That is, I think, 40% more than the year before. So that gives you a sense that the numbers are improving. The interception rate, whether you measure it on the first quarter or the first 5 months of the year, is up considerably on last year, and there's more to come. Now, what the deal does is it represents a massive uplift on the number of law enforcement officers who are being deployed by the French in northern France, about a 500-person uplift, half of which will be in place this year. It also means that we will create, and they will create, a zonal coordination centre, probably in Lille, but elsewhere in northern France, and that will bring together for the first time all the different aspects of their response to this in one place, which will really help. Also, we will have British officers as part of that setup for the first time to improve the coordination between us. That's something that we think can make a big difference. And then the last element of it is the intelligence cooperation and sharing of surveillance and reconnaissance technology. And then the kind of slightly longer term thing, which we've agreed to, is a new migrant detention centre in Dunkirk. But that will take a little bit of time to come on stream. Right, so those are all the elements of what the deal with France represents. As you can see in the numbers this year versus last year, and last year versus the year before, there is a steady upward increase in the interception rate and the number of people who are being stopped. And I think that will continue to happen as our cooperation continues to deepen and that the deal that we announced is fully implemented and operationalised. But it's a good point to end on, because it reminds us that this is not a UK-only phenomenon. Right. When I'm in these summits, when I'm talking to other leaders, there's plenty of other countries that are grappling with the same thing. I talked about the numbers in Europe. We all remember the tragedy that happened off the coast of Italy last year, which is why I'm finding more and more countries are keen to work with us to tackle this problem. One of the things Suella, the Home Secretary, did very early on after I became Prime Minister, her and I re-established the Calais Group of Northern European nations to come together, to work together to tackle this problem. And then we've built on that with our deals with France, deals with Albania, cooperation with Italy, and now many more countries. And you will continue to see that, because ultimately, we are not alone in facing this challenge. But what today's numbers show is that we, the UK, are making progress on gripping it. And that's the main message for people to take away from today, is our plan is working. We're not complacent, there's more work to do, but people should have confidence that when I said I was going to stop the boats, I meant it, and that's what we're delivering. Thank you very much.